just waiting for my slide. And then I will be Yay! Good morning. My name is Shelby Lafrinere, and next week I'll be graduating with a degree in environmental leadership and global interaction. And as such, I am very happy to be here today to talk about the intersection of hip-hop culture and environmental justice. I have been a hip-hop fan and participant since 1983, and it is my belief that hip-hop has emerged in part as a tool to help create racial healing and to bring unity to our global community. It is also my belief that because of the popularity and far reach of hip-hop culture, and as a way to honor the true roots of the culture, it is our responsibility to incorporate teachings of environmental stewardship and environmental justice within the culture as a method to motivate people into action on behalf of the earth in a timely manner, and to do our part in helping combat our global environmental crisis that is happening. This is how I get my title, Healing Interpersonally and Healing Our Planet. We only have one. So, to understand where this intersection lies and how we can utilize it to assist in environmental activism, we need to take it all the way back to the origin of the culture itself. Hip-hop emerged in the early 1970s in the Bronx of New York City as a response to systemic racism and the oppression and poverty and violence that resulted because of it. At this time, the Bronx was essentially a war zone, already wrought with economic disparity. They went through what became known as the Great White Flight, where wealthy residents moved en masse from the city out to the suburbs, which created an even greater economic disturbance. Infrastructure was crumbling, arson rates had doubled, and unemployment skyrocketed. Also, gang violence escalated, which made the neighborhood dangerous, volatile, and it limited the ability of people to travel through and access parts of the borough itself, until these three stepped into their destiny. Afrika Bambaataa, DJ Kool Herc, and Grandmaster Flash are considered to be the godfathers of hip-hop. Each of them are musicians and DJs, and they all helped lay a foundational aspect of the culture itself. Afrika Bambaataa was a leader at the time of a prominent gang known as the Black Spades. However, he'd also been studying the teachings of the Zulu Nation, which were one of the few tribes in Africa that were able to resist colonialism and colonization. He felt that if he could get his gang to transform their aggressive energy into something more unifying and productive, that they could actually help each other rise up instead of continuing the gang-on-gang violence, which was actually just assisting the oppressive forces from the external oppressive forces. DJ Kool Herc was also a musician and DJ, and he's accredited with being the first person to use dual turntables to extend the break, the musical interlude of songs. And this was really influential in the dance stylings of the time, including party rocking and breakdancing. Grandmaster Flash was also a DJ and musician, and he did a lot of innovation in turntable technology, and he also created stylistic additives of hip-hop music like scratching and cuts. But it wasn't, and all of three of these people noticed that because of their musical ability and their ability to provide an environment for people, like throwing parties where they could get free and de-stress, they were able to move from gang territory to gang territory easily because they had something of value that was positive to offer. But it wasn't until the godmother of hip-hop, Cindy Campbell, 16-year-old sister of DJ Kool Herc, organized the first borough-wide, all-access, everyone welcome party. She organized and facilitated and rented out a recreational center under the guise that everyone was welcome to come as long as you remained peaceful and focused on having a good time. And so on August 11th of 1973, hip-hop was born. And this was a huge success. It wasn't just that they were throwing a party. What they threw was the beginning of a revolution. They gave people an opportunity to be heard, to feel valued, and to utilize their skills in something that was positive. The whole point of hip-hop in this formulation was to rise above violence, was to rise above poverty and sadness, and to try to create something that made you want to get up in the morning and actually participate in your life. And they gave people an opportunity not only to be heard, but also to be seen. And what became known on the outside as vandalism, like creating a burner or a mural called bombing trains, was actually very calculated. People in the Bronx couldn't afford to go to Manhattan and hobnob with people on Wall Street, the ones who were making the decisions that were keeping them in poverty. But they could bomb a train, and those trains went through every neighborhood. So that one act of using art as activism was a way to make sure that they were not being ignored any longer. Hip-hop is founded on 4 main elements. So the first one is breaking or break-in or break-dancing. We also have graffiti writing. We have DJing, and we also have MCing. And all of these elements of artistic expression and community building are all encompassed within the idea of knowledge. Knowledge is really important, again, because they weren't just trying to have fun. They were trying to educate and spread the ideas of peace and unity throughout the community. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. Building a intergenerational and multiracial community of positivity. And all of this was founded on my favorite principle, which is each one, teach one. What this says is that all of us, every one of us, have something of value to offer our community, but it is also our responsibility to step into our own individual power and actually offer and participate within the community. And this idea worked. Hip-hop has become a multi-billion-dollar international industry of influence. It is a powerhouse of influence throughout the world that reaches now into almost every country in the planet. It is influencing entertainment and music. It's influencing the fashion industry. It's influencing sports. And we also have an influence in politics. It could be argued that hip-hop itself is a political movement. It came on the heels of the civil rights movement, and it also developed alongside the environmental rights movement. However, because of many factors, most of them rooted in the systemic racism itself, we as a country started treating social justice and economic issues as a separate issue from environmental degradation and environmental issues, which really perpetuated a false idea that to heal this stuff, we needed separate solutions. But that's not true, because racism has been used to justify environmental degradation since the beginning of pretty much humanity. It's also been used as a justification for economic disparity and power inequities. So what we really needed was a new revolution that would combine civil rights and environmental rights into a field known as environmental justice. And fortunately for all of us, that happened. Warren County, North Carolina, was the birthplace of environmental justice movement. But this happened in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Warren County was the poorest county of all of North Carolina, and it also had the highest number of African American residents. They were forced by the state, against their wishes, to build a toxic waste dump because of the actions of other corporations. They fought, civil rights leaders banded together and fought on the idea of environmental racism. They said because of the reality of our whole economic structure, the residents of Warren County didn't have the proper resources to adequately fight against corporations and the government. And while they lost, they raised a very important point through the national spotlight of environmental racism and environmental justice. Environmental justice is the principle that all people and communities are entitled to equal protection under environmental and public health laws and regulations, and that all people should have a seat at the table and be involved in the decision-making process. So, if I have all this set up for you about hip-hop and environmental justice and environmental racism, then why isn't it actually part of mainstream hip-hop? Lots of reasons. Some I would say would be from misunderstanding, miscommunication, and also misrepresentation. The golden era of hip-hop is seen as 1973 to 1979. That's when everything was really, truly about pushing peace and love. It's not to say that people didn't have beef and have issues, but what hip-hop did was, instead of going to the streets with violence and fists and knives and guns, they would take it out artistically for their own level of respect in the community. However, in 1979, hip-hop went mainstream with the dropping of Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper Hill's Delight. Once it hit mainstream, it was subjected, at least in the beginning, to the ideas and manipulation of industry representatives, executives, who at that time were predominantly wealthy white men. And also, that is when women started to get kind of pushed out to the side as well. And I believe personally that that is also part of the problem. We should include it in the teachings of hip hop for lots of reasons. Honoring environmental justice truly honors the legacy and the roots of the culture itself. This culture was developed to bring equality and equity to everyone. No one was excluded from it, everyone was invited. This also, though, pays homage to, it pays homage to the roots of the culture, but really what it is an opportunity to stand in our own power and to offer up a new way of being and interacting with the world. If we truly, the buttons are really close. Because the reality is that toxicity and pollution is affecting people of color and low-income communities at a much higher rate throughout the world. They don't have enough representation and they don't have a voice, but hip-hop was one of the few opportunities where minority people became the majority. And especially in this community, or in this country, but also now around the world, because environmental racism and pollution is still happening. Climate change is still happening. And under the current system, if we don't actually band together, people of color and low income are going to continually be disproportionately affected by the toxicity of these situations, which increases health problems and it decreases land value and financial well-being. And it's happening still today. Flint, Michigan still does not have clean water 5 years later. LA County has more oil wells and oil processing plants than any other city in the country, and almost all of them are located in low-income brown and black communities, which is also being studied and showing that health implications are on a very drastic rise. And Native Indigenous Americans are also still fighting corporations and the government for land access and water. This is an issue that has not yet been solved. You can see from this map that environmental justice conflicts are prevalent throughout the entire world. This map has over 3,400 locations of environmental justice conflicts of a number of different reasons. But to give perspective of what one of these dots gives, like here's New York right up here, these are potential environmental justice conflicts in the Bronx alone. Almost the entire county is still dealing with racism in relation to toxicity and pollution. And in addition to that, being exposed or racism is a form of psychological stress. And prolonged psychological stress can lead to stress exposure disease, which not only weakens immune response, it weakens allostasis, our body's ability to just handle the regular wear and tear of being alive. And it also increases sensitivity to environmental toxins like air and water pollution. We have a lot of studies out showing that being subjected to things like air pollution can intensify your development of respiratory illness and disease, but there are now also lots of studies out showing that children of color who are also subjected to the daily implications of systemic racism are twice as likely to be negatively affected by pollution. So without affecting both and healing racism and pollution, we're setting up our youth, which becomes our future, to really have a lack of success. Environmental racism is a form of segregation. And if hip-hop came to heal segregation, and if hip-hop came to say that social justice matters and that everyone has a place in this world, then you have to stand up for environmental justice and for environmental equity. If hip-hop is social justice, and we understand that social justice cannot be achieved until we tackle our environmental issues and achieve environmental justice, then environmental justice is hip-hop. Hip-hop talks a lot about authenticity and claims hip-hop head. If you were going to be a hip-hop head and be a fan, then by default, you have to stand up for environmental integrity and sustainability in our future. KRS-One and Marley Marr said in their 2006 song, Hip Hop Lives, hip and hop is more than music. Hip is the knowledge, hop is the movement. Hip and hop is intelligent movement. And fortunately, some people have listened. This is not only my idea. There are people in the community. We have mentors and leaders who are trying to bridge this gap for all of us. And so we aren't continually running in a circle, but we're actually all moving forward. And so we have people that can teach us, like Reverend Lennox Yearwood. He created the Hip Hop Caucus, which is a national nonprofit organization that utilizes hip hop to motivate people to become involved in political and environmental matters. They do this under 3 main campaigns. One is Respect My Vote, which I could do a whole thesis on that. The most important part, they're using hip hop to motivate people, especially the youth, to get involved in the political process so we can actually start electing leaders who care about justice. They also work on the People's Climate Music, where they utilize music to speak up on behalf of the earth with artists, for example, like Common did a song about Flint, and Taboo from the Black Eyed Peas also did a song about Standing Rock. And they have now Think 100, which is the coolest show on climate change, a podcast dedicated to climate change and, more importantly, dedicated to educating people on what can you do as an individual to help heal what's happening. And it doesn't have to be an organization. Each of us have power, each one teach one. DJ Cable Motivation is a great example. He has a motto of from gangs to gardens. He teaches people about food justice and organic gardening and things of that nature. And often in hip hop nowadays, because of that manipulation by the industry, money, greed, floss, power is put at the forefront, but that's not what hip hop started from. And so he has this picture. So instead of him being with a stack of $100 bills, he's got a stack of seed packets. And he and his wife have created Going Bling, Going Green. Her name is Alchemy Earth, and they now go into schools and utilize hip hop to talk about food justice, nutritional wellness, and how that plays into environmental health on the whole. And there's so much more happening. It's really exciting. There's graffiti artists making really large statements with graffiti. There are more after-school organizations like A Child of This Culture and No Easy Props. There's a rise in indigenous hip-hop artists coming to the forefront. And we also now have women stepping back into places of power and educating the youth and educating their peers about equality, justice, and what we can utilize when we all actually work for a positive change in the world. And all of this relates into the key point of action. Hip-hop is a culture of participation. Authenticity is paramount in hip-hop. By honoring the roots, we honor ourselves. It is up to all of us to step in and to create this culture of participation. By being a participant in hip-hop, we continue to hold integrity and celebrate it, and also help preserve it for the future. Tupac said, you see, the old way isn't working, so it's on us to do what we gotta do to survive. Hip hop has influence. Our elders of our generation and also of this culture did the work to demand a seat at the table. So for us to be in part of this culture, we need to actually take responsibility and sit down at the table and speak up. We need to speak up on behalf of the earth. We need to speak up on behalf of each other, our one community, and we need to speak up on behalf of ourselves, because change is happening. The question is, when it comes to the environment, what is the type of change that we want to be participating in? Our voices, our dollars, our votes have power, but together, if we demand environmental justice, if we start to recognize that racism is toxic and destroying not only livelihoods and individual people, but our entire global community, we understand that we can speak up not only for humans, but also for the non-human, because we are one community. This is what hip hop is about. Everyone is welcome. All are welcome here. Demand environmental justice, and together we can change this world. Thank you.